Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Barbados Association of Professional Engineers monthly webinar series. My name is Vincent Jones. I am your moderator for this evening. This is a CPD event, that is a continuous professional development event, and carries a value of 2 CPD points. We ask that you please contact our secretariat to have or to claim rather your CPD points. And once you contact and reach out to us, Stacy in the office can forward the information to you so that you can have that for your various professional organizations. A bit of housekeeping. Please note that these sessions run as follows. We introduce our presenter who will present for between 30 and 40 minutes. We then open the session to our general audience to answer questions and interact with our guests. This is done either by raising your hand, at which time the moderator will acknowledge you and invite you to ask your question. Alternatively, you can post your questions in the chat and I will ask the question on your behalf. We ask that you please mute your electronic device unless you're asking a question. Tonight's topic is titled Guarding Project Success, Red Flags and Bow Ties, and it's being presented to us by Mr. LG Ramocan. LG is a well-known, I would say well-known because I've known him for the year, but LG is a lecturer with the University of the West Indies. For any of you that might have done any of the project management or management programs, you might have come across Mr. Ramocan, but I'll just give you a bit of background. LG, who his first name is Eliud, and he can correct me on that when he comes on. I'll start with the fun stuff first. He was a break dancer and a selector back in his TikTok or pre-TikTok days. And he's a baritone singer, band manager, and prolific musician. So you're probably saying, well, who's this person that Vincent Jones has brought to speak to us this evening? Well, that gives you the background of the man himself, just to let you know he's human. But on the professional side, Mr. Ramocan is a specialist in cyber risk supervision at the Bank of Jamaica and has held several capacities over the past 15 years in the areas of balance of payments, data management, and publications and risk assessment. He is the recipient of a BOJ Outstanding Award of Excellence in 2013. And Mr. Ramocan is the author of a groundbreaking publication on remittances entitled Remittances to Jamaica, Findings from a National Survey of Remittance Recipients, and was designated by the MIF as a technical assistance expert in balance of payment statistics in 2014. He's also the author of the globally recognized Ramocan #1 PMP exam prep book and lectures in project management and risk management for several universities in Jamaica, Barbados, and Canada. A well-respected project manager guru, Mr. Ramocan is a certified project management professional, PMP, an agile certified practitioner, PMI-ACP, as well as an authorized training instructor for the Project Management Institute, PMI. From 2020 to 2022, Mr. Ramocan joined the Ministry of National Security on secondment as project manager for the National Cybersecurity Capacity Building Program in collaboration with the government of Israel. Over 2 years, he managed the upgrade of Jamaica's cybersecurity infrastructure and capabilities across the military, police force, digital forensics, and e-government network. During that time, Mr. Ramocan also chaired the National Cyber Awareness and Public Education Subcommittee and guided the formation of the ministry's Public Portfolio Steering Committee, as well as conducted several training series in a project management and cybersecurity risk. Academically, Mr. Ramocan holds a BSc in Computer Science and Economics honors and a Master's of Business Administration, MBA, in General Management from the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. He earned 2 executive educational certificates from Harvard University at John F. Kennedy School of Government in Strategic Management for regulatory and enforcement agencies, as well as a cybersecurity policy, and completed a postgraduate diploma in compliance risk and information governance through the Jamaica Stock Exchange eCampus. In 2018, Mr. Ramocan represented Jamaica in the 4th WTO, which is the Trade Policy Review of Jamaica in Geneva, and has served as a member of the Oxford, Harvard, Cambridge Society of Jamaica, Institute of New Economic Thinking Young Scholars Initiative, CARIFORUM EPA Partnership Committee, PIOJ National Working Group on International Migration and Development, Jamaica Customs Quality Assurance Committee, the American Economic Association, and the PMI Jamaica chapter. He is also a past president of Toastmasters Public Speaking Club in Jamaica. So without further ado, it gives me the greatest of pleasure to welcome to sunny Barbados our brother and friend from across the seas in Jamaica, Mr. L.G. Ramocan. Mr. Ramocan, sir, you can bring your screen up.
Yes, thank you so much, Vincent, and
welcome, and over to you, sir.
All right, thank you so much. I'll have to share my screen just now. All right, okay. I'm so privileged to have been asked to present to you today to share with you something that I'm sure would have intrigued your mind when you saw the topic. Guarding project success, red flags, and bow ties. What is Mr. Ramocan coming with? What's LG coming with today? All right, well, I just want to thank Vincent for that introduction. And this presentation will be shared, with the community, with the association after. It's quite a bit, but I just want to make sure that we're able to connect some dots today to be able to see how we can better guard project success on the projects that you either contribute to or that you lead. The main objective is to improve your risk intelligence. Have you ever heard that term before? Your risk intelligence. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And to be able to improve your risk intelligence when you're managing engineering projects, one red flag at a time, one bow tie at a time. So we'll be looking at the importance of managing risks in order to guard project success. How can we identify red flags in projects, and how to use the bow tie method to be able to do so. Now, I guarantee you that what you'll hear today, you've never heard before as relates to your engineering practice, as relates to managing projects. Now, we do know that managing uncertainty and risk is fundamental to the engineering practice. I mean, just think about it. Engineering is both an art and a science. And as engineers, and I do have a little background in engineering, though it's more from the software engineering aspect of things, it generally requires us to be proactive in how we protect those who use what we build, to protect the public from hazards, recognizing, assessing, act upon uncertain events, their consequences, and doing that in the design process. We're big on building in quality to assure that any risks that could occur, that we're able to preempt that. So a big slogan is safety first. We believe that as engineers. And the practice of engineering is often described from a more mathematical and scientific background. The application of mathematics, science, along, of course, with our experience and judgment, in order to investigate, evaluate, plan, design, construct, and operate systems so that we can assure health, safety, wellness to the public who should be utmost protected in the design of what we do. But there's the other side of engineering, which is the art of modeling systems that, as this quote says, that we cannot precisely analyze, which consists of elements and interfaces we do not completely understand, but we do have nice models for it, to withstand loads we cannot properly assess in its greatest detail and with all scenarios on under consideration in such a way that the public at large has no reason to suspect the extent of our ignorance. Now, this is both a very creative and humbling definition, and also reinforces the importance of our proactive, methodological, preemptive approach towards the practice of engineering. Now, if we were just building systems for systems, or just building systems just for our own pleasure, and to just amaze ourselves with what we can do, then engineering wouldn't be as bad. But the thing is that people are complicated. We build systems, we build buildings, various kinds of architectures are instantiated and put into reality through projects or people. And people are complicated, which is one of the reasons why managing projects and safeguarding project success becomes complicated. Because people don't just consider the pros and cons to make rational decisions. They make decisions based on their own way. And their own way may be colored by their own personal characteristics, the context, their interests, their attitudes, what they know now, what they choose not to remember. And all these various permutations of uncertainties arise in how do we develop the most robust system to be able to work in all various scenarios, including the scenarios where people make irrational decisions. So people are complicated, and the environment that we're in is increasingly uncertain for many reasons. So that's why in the practice of engineering, we speak about hazards, and we're also very big on risks, being able to reduce risks, mitigate risks, and being able to make sure that we can reduce both the probability and impact of risks that could cause harm. So a risk management approach to safeguarding projects, the success of projects, is crucial to the engineering practice. It adds value at every stage of a project. And by balancing the performance of the engineering system with the client's risk profile and applying the tools and techniques in project management, that will help us to increase the likelihood of project success. So theoretically, we're taught in project management that as you begin a project, you have the longest range view of risks, because there are many things, many sharks out there from the seashore looking out to the horizon that can bite you. But as you go through the project, what could have happened that didn't happen won't happen again, or at least so we think. So therefore, we have less and less to worry as we progress through a project. And as we produce deliverables, as we're able to satisfy the customer, meet our milestones according to our schedule and our budget, we're able to create value. But the truth is, it doesn't go as cleanly and as predictable as this graph shows. Many times along the way, new risks occur, and then it starts its own new curve. It may continue to go down, and then another risk occurs. Let's call that COVID. And then it goes up again. And so therefore, at times, what we experience when we're seeking to manage risks, we experience a continuous increase in risks, though different types of risks, as we go along projects. And we now have to reassess our situation to be able to better manage those risks, to protect the value of the project, to guard project success. So the key points from this presentation are in 3 points. To guard project success, we must be risk smart, which will lead us to identify project risks better and beware of red flags. And we'll learn how to use a bow tie method to better manage project success. So to guard project success, we must first be risk smart. And in being risk smart, we recognize that the degree to which risk management is pursued really tells a lot as to whether we will be successful on a project or not. Now, all of us, we manage risks in one way or the other. And even when we choose not to manage risks, the risks may increase and manage us. So we're generally better off at least trying to identify the risks. But is that where it stops? We need to analyze the risks to better understand the nature of it, the probability, the impact, the way it works, how it can affect other things, to evaluate the risk to see how it impacts our activities, in what way, in terms of schedule delays, more costs, quality issues, and so forth. And to go beyond just understanding the risk and now figuring out a way to treat that risk. So if it is out of hand, based on our understanding right now, we're able to avoid it altogether. We're able to mitigate it, to transfer to someone else, or to an insurance scheme, some other provider, some outsourced outfit, some other subcontractor that we can subcontract that risk to be able to better manage it to guard project success. Now, I'm sure you do some or most of these type of steps in your project. The difference in what I'll be presenting today is to give more light, to shed more light on the interlinkages between these processes and to emphasize the importance of communicating risks, consulting, and the monitoring and reviewing of risks. So what we realize is that the risk management process isn't a one-off kind of activity. As the arrows show, it is a dynamic set of processes where we need to emphasize, as we will emphasize in this presentation, to communicate risks more effectively, to gain greater clarity so that we can navigate uncertainty, to be able to establish a context so that we can find the right kinds of risks, the relevant risks, so we can analyze what matters, evaluate what matters, and to treat what matters, and to monitor and review on a regular basis to be able to assess how risks are being treated, how risks are evolving, and whether new risks are on the horizon to better understand. The PMI, which is a Project Management Institute, in its 2015 magazine called The Pulse of the Profession, it found that for organizations that apply a formal risk management approach, 73% of projects meet their objectives, 61% finish on time, and 64% are completed within the approved budget. Now, there are two ways to look at this. Well, one, you'll say that, wow, only 60% completed within the budget, so risk management isn't really helping at all. Or only 60% finish on time, risk management isn't working for them. But think about if they did not apply any formal risk management approaches, what the results would be. As a matter of fact, it would be the inverse, as previous PMI research has shown, that 70% of IT projects fail because of a lack of proper risk management. And those kind of statistics are pretty common in many other types of projects, including engineering projects. So risk management is important. It allows you and your organization to anticipate, manage change, improve decision-making. It helps you to be proactive rather than reactive. It increases your chances to realize opportunities for the benefits of the business. It helps you to generate a broad view, a broad level of awareness of uncertainty of different outcomes so that you can design a quality, the right kind of standards that will preempt and prevent particular quality issues. And it supports overall organizational agility and resilience for you to be able to be adaptable and to recover from setbacks much quicker. And from a project management perspective, risk management also establishes an iterative cycle of being able to review risks at different levels, the portfolio, the program level, and also the project itself, and the interlinkages that are important to the organization and to the customer. So what is risk communication? in brief. So risk communication is a very important part of the overall risk management process, which is often overlooked. It is what we use to change beliefs, to change behaviors, to increase awareness of hazards, encourage protective behavior, to inform, build up knowledge on hazards and risks, to be able to involve actors in decision-making, to build trust, to warn of pending current events, to reassure the audience, reassure the users, reassure those who will utilize the facilities that we build, to ensure that they're used in a safe way. And also to do this during the construction and after the construction, before the construction, and in many different formats for different types of audiences to understand. So what we want to get from this is that effective risk management begins with risk communication. And as you improve your risk communication, you're able to mature in terms of your risk management processes, tools, and techniques. So you can shift away from risk ignorance towards, over a continuum, towards risk intelligence. So what is risk intelligence? Well, we said that to guard project success, you must be risk smart. When we look at the definition of intelligence, we think about one's thinking ability to understand and learn well, to form judgments and opinions, to reason well. We think of intelligence from a CIA point of view, where governments and other groups gather information about other countries and other happenings to be able to come to a particular strategy. And then there are the 7 types of intelligence usually taught from an education point of view, where we speak about there are multiple types of intelligences. Now, as we define the practice of engineering, we use the more scientific, mathematical, logical definition, which tends to be what engineering is known for, to analyze problems very well and to be able to break down complex computations and to be able to think through different syllogisms, arguments, and the cause and effects to come to a logical conclusion. That's important. And I'm sure you have that in many respects through your formal training in engineering. But there are other forms of intelligence that we need to include as part of the ingredients of being risk aware and risk smart to guard against project failure, to guard against red flags. So to what extent are we improving our risk management approach to be able to look at the geospatial impact of one activity versus the next? To what extent do we understand that to be a good risk manager, you have to appreciate that emotions matter as well, how your workers feel, how you motivate them. We have to be able to appreciate that linguistics intelligence is a very important part of risk intelligence. Words matter, language matters, how you describe things, how you clarify matters. And there are various angles of intelligence that are important to have a holistic, proactive, risk intelligent framework. Here's a quote from a popular motivational speaker and businessman, Vusi from South Africa. He says, intelligence is about how elastic your mind is. It is not a number. It's a function of elasticity. You determine a person's intelligence by his ability to interrogate new data, using new frameworks, and to arrive at new outcomes without getting stuck in the past. And as engineers, we have learned many different kinds of frameworks, many different types of toolkits. We have to appreciate that more new risks are emerging, new technologies, new pandemics, new crises of various sorts have emerged, have been present with us, and will continue to evolve. And we have to be willing, open enough to be able to be elastic in our mind to look at new frameworks, to arrive at new outcomes, new data, so that we don't get stuck in the past. And that's where risk intelligence comes in. Risk intelligence goes beyond the regular risk management. It's about the ability to think holistically about risk and uncertainty, to speak a common risk language, to be effective using forward-looking risk concepts, tools to be able to make better decisions, alleviate threats, capitalize on opportunities, and create lasting value. So to guard project success, we must be risk smart. And this means to be able to further reduce uncertainty in our projects, to move more effectively towards risk response plans that work, and to have a higher level of competency and skills in risk management. This will help us to assess more competently our situation, the risks that are evolving, to make better decisions and to have better performing projects. So there are many tools and techniques in project risk management that we could speak about today. And we're going to focus on two, which are red flag detection and the bow tie method. So to guard project success, we must be risk smart. And also to guard project success, we must beware of red flags. Now, what is a red flag? A red flag can be defined as an issue, an early warning, a risk trigger, something that says, something seems to be up here. I need to dig in deeper. How easy is it for you to pick up on red flags? Sometimes the red flag is right next to us, underneath our nose, or as this picture shows, the red flag is actually covering our eyes, and therefore we're blind to the many other things that are happening. So it is as if we're shooting in the dark and we're not hitting on target towards project success. So we must beware of red flags, and utilizing the linguistic approach to intelligence to improve our risk intelligence. We need to recognize that in today's fast-paced world, language plays a pivotal role in shaping our perceptions or decisions. And not all words are equal. So some seemingly innocent words, as we speak to the contractors, as we speak to our suppliers, as we speak to our stakeholders and so on, some innocent words may carry very subtle red flags, slyly influencing us to act impulsively or accept information without scrutiny. Now, we've gone through the pandemic. We know the importance of detecting misinformation. We know the importance of not accepting information just like that. We need to look at the sources and so forth. So you have a good primer already. So let's look at these 6 red flags for a moment. Fast, free, new, now, everybody, and also typically. These words, among many other red flags, are used quite often in our conversations as we go about our projects, and we don't realize how it can lead us towards false promises, false premises, false expectations, and failed projects. So we need to be aware of red flags, such as, when you receive an email that says no hidden charges, or, get a cash bonus now, send in your money order, no obligation, no fees, get rich now, fast cash, no investments, no need to purchase right now, you can pay later. Urgent, act now, click here, this is the last day, this is your last chance. Instant access, don't wait now, order today. Prime Day was recent, and of course, there are lots of things to buy. Sign up for free. Get this before this offer expires. Get it while supplies last. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And there are all of these kinds of nice-sounding words that are actually red flags that we must be aware on our projects. So we could go through each, but you know them, right? If there's somebody that says that they can deliver fast and faster than everybody else, and they're able to do this thing really speedily, red flag. Will this possibly sacrifice quality, attention to detail? Are there some safety issues if we go too fast? Free. Well, we know that nothing is free. Everything has its cost. So if you hear that this is free, then you know that there are some hidden costs, hidden commitments. Where's the fine print? How will this affect what you should truly expect? And how will this affect what people will think when they receive something and they know that no, they have a lot more costs or expenses to follow up with after that. New. Yes, we can get the latest technology. We can hear that there's this newest engineering technology that we can use and it has revolutionized the world and so on. So we're going to just get everything that is new, everything that is up to date, AI enabled, and let's run with it. New carries with it inherent excitement, yes, but also inherent risks and flaws. And we have to be aware of that as well. Now, everybody, and the number one red flag, when I say number one, meaning the one that is least looked upon, the word typically. When you hear someone say that, especially when you're looking at, which contractor to choose or, which vendor to go with, and they say, well, typically we have results of, 80% efficiency. Typically, we're able to lower the amount of energy utilized by this amount. Typically, we have about 99.999% success. That word typically means that it does not apply to the many other non-typical, atypical situations. Typically means that we're assuming that things will be normal for that to happen. And we're not living in normal times. Things don't happen, things don't unfold in the way that we usually plan. So we have to use that as a red flag because it can lead us to a biased representation of reality, overlooking individual differences, outliers, things that are unique to our stakeholders, to our resources, to our environment, that we must be able to also assess. We can also use Johari's window. That's the name of the two psychologists, Joseph and Harry, who came up with this framework to look at what you know versus what other people know, what you know but other people don't know, what other people know but you don't know, and what you don't know and others don't know as yet. So there are some red flags that are in the public that both you and stakeholders know about, and those may be identified already. There may be other red flags that you know about, but others don't know about. There are red flags that you don't know about, but others see it, but it's your blind spot. And then there are other red flags that you need to know, excavate, ask the right questions, look at different leading indicators, early indicators, look at the typical red flags that can lead you to other red flags to be able to discover these flags. So there are many common project risks that we can call red flags. When the project purpose or need is not well defined, when the project design and deliverable definition is incomplete, when the estimating is based on unrealistic assumptions, when there are scheduling errors, when there are delays, whether by the consultant or the contractor, where there's lack of communication, lack of clarity, where there's confusion, where there's scope creep, where there's gold plating, where there are conflicts at different levels, even sometimes conflicts that seem small now, but because you've ignored it, it's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Red flags. Legal action delays and pauses in projects that then will rack up the costs and shift out the deadlines even further, creates reputational risk and customer dissatisfaction. These are red flags we have to look out for that then lead to larger risks. It is by identifying these red flags that we're able to be on the journey to guard against project success. Because what happens with these different red flags, such as scope creep or gold plating, is that it creates schedule overruns, cost overruns, quality issues, increased project risks, and therefore threatens the success of the project. So what can we do? We can seek to define the project scope more clearly, make sure there's full clarity on the requirements, ensuring that there is a proper change control system that is properly communicated, understood, and used properly, and to establish better communication channels with stakeholders. These would help tremendously to be able to detect red flags, to be able to manage them early, and to get better results. Now, the next thing that we need to appreciate is that risks interact. Risks interact and risks distract. And we have to use a bow tie method to better manage risks. Now, why is this important? This is important because one risk can lead to another risk, creating a domino effect, a chain reaction, a looping of risk structures. So what may seem as an individual cause and effect can lead to a domino effect, a chain reaction that ends up out of control. So that's why we have the bow tie method. Have you ever used the bow tie method? The bow tie method originated as a method for assessing hazards and operational risks. And it continues to be applied in many different areas across all risks: financial risks, strategic risks, security risks, quality risks, business interruption, political, human resource risks, design risks, and project risks. Now, what we see here is what's known as a probability impact matrix, where you have the likelihood or the probability on the left, and then the impact on the bottom. And what this shows is essentially the risk landscape of all the risks that you have identified for your project. Some are low probability, low impact, as we see here, and then some are higher up, going towards a medium range, and some could actually be in the red range, high probability, high impacts that we have not identified as yet. What the bow tie method helps us to do is to be able to zoom in on a particular risk and to look at how one risk can actually impact another risk, creating a domino effect, a convergence of risks that we would not have seen by just analyzing an individual risk, but by looking at the interactions of the risks, we see that there's going to be a bigger problem, where low probability, low impact risks can join together to end up creating a high impact, high probability risk. And the bow tie method helps us to be able to trace these different risks to better understand. So let's get formal. Let's bow tie it and be able to better analyze risks and safeguard our projects. So how the bow tie method works is that we're able to look at an individual risk or particular major event that a risk could create, and look backwards, backcast, to see what are the possible causes, and to forecast what are the possible impacts that risk could have on your project. And after identifying the different causes on the left-hand side and the different types of impacts on the right-hand side, to now implement preventative controls on one hand to mitigate, avoid that risk, and to the extent that that risk seeps through and there's some impact still, to have some kind of remedial corrective measures, actions to be able to soften the blow of that impact. So in a sense, we don't just look at risk individually, we bow tie it, and we look at the causes that lead up to that main event and the resultant impact that flows from each risk. And the value of using the bow tie method is that it helps us to understand risks better and to be able to map controls to it. It is both scientific, it is methodological, it helps us to be able to go through the full risk management processes while keeping it very accessible, very friendly to those who are not necessarily adept in risk management and risk management techniques. So here's a case study. In a sense, it's a train that would have ended up getting off track because there were some rocks on the track and the train would have turned over, and this would have happened at night, and the driver was actually quite sleepy, and the original driver actually got sick, so therefore there had to be a driver that had to now continue into the next shift to be able to drive this train. And this actually occurred on a very steep, embankment where the train rolled down, and it would have caused deaths and led to many passengers to sue the company. The company's reputation suffered from that. And the number of passengers that use that train service now is markedly much lower. So what we can do with this case study is that we can identify the causes, some causes of this train not crashing, but getting off course and then turning over. Would have been caused by one, it happened at night. There are rocks. The headlight was faulty, as circled here. And the driver was excessively tired, and a number of drivers went on sick leave because of the flu, and the steepness of embankment would have also caused not just minor injuries, but major injuries. And a mix of these would have led to the train derailment occurring. We can also look at the various events that occurred and the impact, the serious injuries, the damage to the train, the reputational risks, the regulatory fines, the lawsuits that demand compensation for the damages, and of course the resultant lower number of passengers who are using the train service. So we can create a risk story from this using the bow tie method. First, we have the derailment as a major thing where the train would have turned over, and the different things that caused it: the rocks, the driver fatigue, the rocks were unseen, it was at night, the headlights were faulty, employee sickness, the steep embankment. And then we can look at the initial immediate impact and the secondary impact into the largest consequences, namely being reduced revenue, fines, train damage, compensation, and passenger injury. So by using the bow tie method, we're able to construct what could happen or what happened. So it can be used for a risk, a future possibility, and you're trying to see what are the possible causes that we need to make sure don't present itself. And then to look at the type of impacts that we need to communicate early to our stakeholders to ensure that this risk does not occur. It can also be used for a risk that has been realized, that has occurred, but has not gone full blown as yet, that we're able to kind of understand the causes better so that we can treat the risk and the impacts better. So by looking at the risk causes that lead to the major risk event and the impact, we're able to better understand the people, the processes, the systems, the potential points of failure, the bottlenecks, the single points of failure, the data errors, the financial mishaps, the injury, the reputational damage, employee dissatisfaction that would occur from either the causes or the impacts. And then from there, we're able to trace the likely paths of how the risk may unfold and be able to mitigate these various risk paths or risk stories. there's more to the bow tie method. We're now able to add controls to prevent those causes from leading to the main event, and also controls that will reduce the volume or the impact of what could happen after the event. So by using the bow tie method, it's more than just identifying risks. It's more than just analyzing the risks. It's also putting in the preventative controls to stop the risk causes from leading to the main catastrophe. To play detective work, to be able to figure out how we can correct, remediate, and to reduce the overall impact by either avoiding particular things, by mitigating or transferring the risk of particular points along this bow tie to be able to safeguard project success. So by using the bow tie method, we're able to analyze various scenarios. We're able to look at what things can we watch closely and measure so that those can be our key risk indicators to be able to better measure, because when you can measure it, you can manage it better. And then be able to create graphs and dashboards behind that to better manage those risks. Now, there is a software that actually helps us with that, and it's called the Bow Tie. It's called Bow Tie Pro. You can look it up. You can go to bowtiepro.com and you can download the software for free. There's, of course, a premium version and where you have a lot more features, but you're able to create your own bow ties of risks that have not occurred and bow ties of situations that have occurred that you need to understand better to guard project success. There is one that is a standalone desktop version. There's also a cloud web-based version to interlink virtual teams. There's a corporate version if your engineering company would like to look at that. Because by approaching it in a bow tie method, you're better able to guard against project failure and to assure project success. So in conclusion, what are the key things I want you to remember? I want you to remember that to guard project success, you need to be risk smart. To guard project success, we need to be aware of red flags. To guard project success, we use the bow tie method. So let us put on our bow tie before using any kind of bow and arrow kind of approach to attack the risks. We can properly assess the risks by looking at the causes, the possible domino effects that can create a risk story that can lead towards the potential effects. Let us put on our bow tie before we start hammering, before we start using all the many sophisticated risk tools to better understand the risk. We can get more people together around the same table, looking at the same whiteboard, draw the bow tie first, get everyone's input included, let everyone feel that their views are being considered to paint the big picture of the risk so that when we use the bow tie method, we can suit up for project success. Thank you very much.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Fantastic presentation as always. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now like to open for some questions and answers. The whole point of this evening is to be able to interact and to ask some questions. I see there are some architects in the room. I can see a colleague of mine who's going to be delivering the next one of these webinars in the series, which I'll speak about a little later on. So we've got several persons here, and we want to encourage you at this point. You can raise your hand, you can put a question in the chat. But Mr. Ramocan, these are useful tools, but how challenging is it to introduce these type of tools in a Caribbean context? You live in Jamaica, we are here in Barbados. These things always sound really nice when you hear them in presentations like this, but then you have to go to a job site and you try to start to implement or introduce these things to people who've been doing something the same way for 40 years and they tell you, I've been doing this for the last 40 years, I ain't really about to be changing. How have you found that push and pull professionally?
Yes, very good question, Vincent. Yeah, so as a project manager, it's important to appreciate that there's a demographic that we're managing, right? Those who are older, those who are younger, those who are more experienced, those who are not so experienced, those who are more fixed in their ways, and those who are open to change. And one of the first things that's important is to be not just a project manager of the systems and the structures that you're building, but to be first a project leader of the people. That is to look at how we can improve the way that we think about problems and think about our circumstance, think about how did we arrive here, and also to model where we would like to be. And the PMI actually has the answer to that question, which is for us to be able to look beyond just the regular triple constraints. That's looking at scope and time and cost. And we have to stick within these constraints no matter what. And we can't think outside of the triangle. You hear about thinking outside of the box. People have problems even thinking outside of a triangle. So PMI has warmed up the profession to the culture of ways of working. So there isn't just one way of working. We need to be able to understand and adopt many ways of working. And the Sagicor School of Business, we offer a project management course, which allows you to look at the many different approaches to working through projects, to be able to more effectively arrive at the results that matter. We have ways of working, we have power skills, which means to be able to be a more collaborative leader. There are persons who, the persons who are most experienced tend to be the persons who are fixed in their ways, because they'll say that they've been there, done that, and this is how they know things work. And that is good. They're actually one of the best persons to be able to help to mentor persons on what standards are the proven standards, right? And then the younger persons, or persons who are a bit more open-minded, a bit more naturally, can push the other way in terms of a more innovative mindset to be able to show that, hey, you know, there are these new technologies, there are these new techniques, and we have seen some reasonable success on these things. So that as a project manager, as a project leader, you create a sandwich approach towards improving the risk culture or the overall culture towards adopting new ideas. And the thing is that the reason for this presentation is that as engineers, as project managers, to be able to be both efficient and effective, which we call the 2 F's of management, efficiency and effectiveness, we're better off having a more analytical approach to be able to relook at our assumptions of why certain things work, and to relook at new approaches to see how those can work in our context. So we should promote a more innovative mindset, to be more inquisitive, to ask more questions, to be able to be more collaborative, to offer more feedback, and in a sense, to be more entrepreneurial, in a sense, in our approach to be able to find the best solution, the best design to our engineering problems that we're asked to solve. And as we spoke about, being risk intelligent means to go beyond the borders of even traditional risk management, because even those who are very trained in risk management can find themselves in a very rigid way of saying that there's only one way to go about managing risks. And so therefore, what we should at least seek to do is to offer a culture that we try to add more clarity. Because where there's more clarity, we're able to uncover risks and we're able to uncover potential within the stubborn people who don't want to change things, and uncover potential and strengths in those who like to lead some kind of change, so that we can now invite new frameworks, look at threats that were not given the kind of attention that we should, vulnerabilities to clarify risks better, to implement better controls to track the things that matter to us, and to be able to communicate not just to our immediate team, but also to the external providers that will help us achieve project success.
Okay. Now, Mr. Ramocan, you work in an institution which has yes, a focus on Jamaica, but obviously a somewhat of a regional outlook, because I am aware the central banks in the region tend to work together pretty closely. If you were to know that we have 6 months outside the vagaries and the challenges that COVID threw us as a region, and you had to look back at our regional COVID experience and you apply the risk management to what this region went through, how would you grade the region, and where do you see that we can improve going forward for the other challenges that this region will have to face?
Very good question. So the pandemic is something that none of us predicted. Yet we had to be able to use our resources to be as resourceful as possible, to be able to respond to the challenges, to be able to ensure that the things that matter within our organization continue to be able to perform as well as it can in the context, and to be able to recover as quickly as is possible given the context of the pandemic. Now, various countries had different experiences, but there are some things that we can draw from the experience collectively as Caribbean countries, that in speaking with various businesses, both Fortune 500 companies in the US and also in the Caribbean, in terms of how banks, how manufacturing companies, how construction companies were able to navigate through the pandemic, that they kind of distilled a few key points that I'd just like to share. Now, we know the acronym SMART, right? Being specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound. Now, the pandemic, I believe, helped us to reimagine what SMART means. And as a matter of fact, we are smarter as a result of it. And a few lessons learned that I think for all of us that we can draw on that came from the pandemic experience included the S in smarter, which is succession planning. The companies who had some form of succession planning in place from before were the ones who are better able to navigate through the pandemic experience. So the question is, does your company have a succession plan or a succession program, a management program in place? Because what the pandemic showed us is that the top people who are usually the big talkers or the big influencers, right, who are usually always there, may not always be there. Or the persons who are lower in the ranks of the organization, who are usually always there. They are what we call the engine room people, always there, keeping the organization running, that they may be sick, or maybe not them, a family member may be sick, or there may be constraints in terms of where people can go, as what would have happened for a number of construction sites. Some of the construction workers were locked into a particular parish or a particular state because of the restrictions in movements. So they weren't able to come to work to continue the work. What is a succession planning? What is the kind of job shadowing that we have in place? So when those things happen, maybe not in a pandemic form, but some other kind of disruption, that we can assure continuity of business. So that's succession planning. The next one is market access. The companies that built relationships with other markets outside of their immediate market, their immediate country, were able to weather the storm better. In other words, if their local economy was impacted, they were still earning revenues from other jurisdictions. So there's a company in Jamaica called Grace Kennedy, one of the notable companies in Jamaica. And before the pandemic, and before they reach 100 years old, along their stretch to become 100 years old, they decided to ensure that they have a diversified portfolio of revenue. So not just earning money in Jamaica or from the Caribbean or from Caribbean nationals or diaspora, the diaspora in the US, UK, but they ventured to now expand their offerings. And as a result, before the pandemic, over 50% of their revenues were earned from overseas. And now how did that help? That helped a lot, because even though there were restrictions in different countries, they didn't all happen at the same time and they didn't all last as long as others did. So they were able to be more adaptable and more resilient. The other letters in SMARTO speak to affiliate networks and partnerships, having a response team, a risk response team in place. A lot of us were forced to have some kind of risk response COVID task force because of COVID. But those who had some kind of risk management framework in place, a risk-aware culture in place, had a risk committee or a kind of risk response team in place. Even though it was not customized for a pandemic, they were able to be able to adapt towards the new challenges that the pandemic resulted in. And T in SMART is technology platforms. Those who had established technology platforms in place, whether for e-commerce, for communicating with their teams, or when teams had to work from home and they needed laptops, or they already had laptops, VPNs, and all those sorts of technological imperatives in during the pandemic, they were able to, well, they didn't have to do anything. They already had that in place, or they just needed to scale a bit further to include more persons, but they had the general platforms and frameworks in place. And the last two in SMARTER is the companies that showed empathy. E for empathy, also fared out well in terms of retaining customers and retaining their staff through the pandemic. And we see that as a part of being risk intelligent. Part of being risk intelligent is marrying risk management with emotional intelligence. Those who are able to understand the increased stress that their staff went through and continue to go through as a result of the pandemic, and even after the pandemic, were able to respond with things that truly mattered to their staff. And their staff stayed, they were more loyal, and they were able to help the company to recover quicker as a result of it. And the last letter in SMARTO is roadmaps. It's important to not just think about your current project or the current activity in the project that you're working on, but also to have a roadmap, a long-range view of the many other projects that will add value, or the many other interventions in terms of solving the continuum of problems that you're tasked to solve, to be able to think ahead and to have some kind of resources aligned towards that, to be able to navigate and to pivot. When one project is stalled, you're able to turn your attention to another project that in the particular phase that it is, it has room to be able to accelerate and to be able to move forward towards that. The last thing I just want to mention here, Vincent, which now speaks to the psychology of risks management, which will help us to guard against project success, guard against project failure and improve project success, is an interesting term. It's called IBM. Now, we know IBM as the technology company, the computer company IBM. But IBM in this case, no, which I found just in speaking with many different Caribbean entrepreneurs as they navigated through COVID, the pandemic, those who succeeded, those who were able to, through the pandemic, actually provide even more superior products and a superior service as a result of the pandemic. During the pandemic, they were able to do an IBM, which is they were able to maximize in between moments. That's what IBM means, in between moments. And think about a football game. The striker, right, in order the best goals that you've seen in a football game are the in-between moment ones. In other words, while one person has a midfielder, for example, has the ball, the striker, those who are on the forward, are now running closer to the goal, so that once a ball is being passed to them, they can now just shoot the ball into the goal, right? So while the passes are happening between other players, the other players that are closer to the goal are using those in-between passes, in-between moments to position themselves for the goal. And we found that the Caribbean companies, those with an engineering focus, and those with a customer service focus, those that are more service-oriented or product-oriented, those who are able to use what would seem to be the downtime or the lockdown time during the pandemic to either upgrade their skills, to be able to pivot to offer new products, to be able to create new lines of service, or to be able to train a new team of people to be able to take on jobs that they're not necessarily used to, but they can transition to. Those were the ones who, coming out of the pandemic, end up having stronger teams, stronger systems, and therefore stronger results and performance after the pandemic. So those are some things that I've gathered through some research within the Caribbean, outside the Caribbean, that I think we can take away as members of this association to have stronger teams and stronger products and results coming from our engineering projects.
Okay, I have a question from Jamila Haynes, and Jamila's asking, just to add to the question asked, from my experience, I find that when you respect a person's input, challenge the assumptions and provide a rationale, they may be more open to change. What are your thoughts on that, LG?
Yes, absolutely. When you show appreciation to someone, you'll be amazed what they'll do for you, what they'll do for your projects, what they'll do for your company. And that is a secret ingredient, a secret spice, Jamelia, that you've identified that definitely will help an organization to perform well. And this goes for persons who receive corrections and receive new information and new approaches very well. And even for those who seem to be on the defensive side, those who are resistant, because there is a way to be able to improve the morale of your team. As you see here, we have a team here that is not exactly enthusiastic about your project. And there are different things that we can do to be able to improve that so that your team becomes a high performance team. Now, we know something called, it's actually called the Tuckman's ladder, norming, or it starts with forming, storming, norming. You have to go through the storm before you norm, performing, and then adjourning or reforming. And there are 3 C's, 3 V's, 3 A's, and 3 R's that will support what Jamelia has stated here, which will help your team to be able to crank up their performance, right? To be able to give greater results, a greater contribution to your teams, and that will guard project success. And I'll just quickly highlight these 3 C's. The 3 C's speaks to what Jamelia spoke about, which is to complement, celebrate, and communicate. By just doing that, it will, as Jamelia says here, it will show respect to the person's input. While challenging their assumptions, you're able to show the positive sides and also the sides that should have some great attention, and create a conversation around it that helps them to open up to that change. Many times as project managers, we tend to cut to the chase, to just instruct people, do this, do that. And we don't take the time to be able to clarify. We don't take the time to get to know the person. Because when a person came into work today, they came with a baggage of problems from home. Of course, we should expect them to be able to drop that and focus on the work, but we can make it easier for them by being able to complement possibly something that they did last week or something that they did yesterday. that you liked. It may not have been perfect, but you can even compliment the progress, even if they have not reached your standard of perfection. We should get to know our staff a bit better. What are they looking forward to? Is it a child's birthday? Is it a child's graduation? Is it them completing studies? Is it them seeking to buy a new home? And to celebrate along the journey, even before they reach the milestone. Those little things create the humanness that is important to get huge results on your project. Another important one is the three V's here. That is the vent, validate, and value. Now, Jamila, you'll find this one interesting because I'm sure that you've dealt with people who are just very difficult. No matter what you say to them, they're just always negative, and they always have some kind of bad vibes to them, or they always have some kind of bad story why they should not continue with this company, or why this person did that to them and therefore they're not going to support this project, and so on. But the 3 V's invite us as project managers to use a very emotional, intelligent, and risk-smart approach, which is to vent, allow them to vent, then you seek to validate, and then turn their attention to value that augurs well for the project, value that allows them to use their energy, strengths, talents towards achieving the project objectives and achieving greater value in the project. So vent means allowing them to talk, allowing them to blow off the steam, and you're just listening. You're not interrupting. It's non-judgmental. And then once they're finished speaking, and you do ask, would like to say anything more, right? To show that you're willing to listen longer. But there comes a point, even those who have a lot of steam, that they end up going in circles. And you can now use that point to say, am I hearing this? This is what I'm hearing. This is what I am understanding in terms of how you feel. Now, you don't have to agree with anything that they say. Maybe everything that they're saying is a lie. Maybe everything that they're saying is not true. But you can at least validate that how they're feeling is real. Now, should they be feeling that way or not is a different question, but you can at least validate their feelings. Validate that what they've said comes from their true self. And then now you can seek to add value by adding new perspectives and saying that, hey, have you ever thought about this approach? Or, my friend tried this and they were able to kind of cope through this situation. How about trying that? Or redirect them to the project and the tasks at hand, and to remind them that you have that your support is behind them, that they can be assured that you will help them along the way to get through what they are currently going through and to set them up for success. These ways, these approaches help a lot in managing the technical risks that we tend to speak a lot more about, and helps to build the kind of trust that is needed in the project. Because Stephen Covey has a book called, not just 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but there's another one called At the Speed of Trust, where it shows that one of the best ways to guard project success, one of the best ways to manage risks, is to increase the level of trust, to build trust within your team. Because it is the teams where you build a high environment of trust, or an environment of high trust. It is those teams that have that environment of high trust that they tend to perform at a higher level of performance and produce a higher level of results. And we owe that to our team, to create that environment for them to storm through quickly, normalize at a high standard, and to perform at their best to be able to achieve exceeding results.
Fantastic. Jamila, you wanted to say anything in response to LG's comment?
Hi, Vincent, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you nice and clearly. Go ahead.
No, not really. I mean, I like this last graphic that he explained here about the compliment, celebrate, and communicate. And he's right. I mean, clients as well as there are many types of stakeholders which would be, like you said, sometimes would be difficult to work with, but I realized that in using empathy and just showing that you understand their perspective kind of helps build a slight rapport so that they tend to be then more open to whatever suggestions you have to propose to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
And
it from me.
and it helps a
Wonderful.
lot, especially in the construction industry where you might have had a client that might have been burnt in the past.
Yes, exactly.
This is a very important
Yes,
aspect. Yeah.
Because a lot of it comes down to trust.
that's right.
And I realized recently, as when you made a comment about the pandemic as well and information, people aren't as trusting with authority figures anymore like before. So it's really challenging now because especially in the age of technology and Google, clients would search everything and come and bring it to you and you'll be like, okay, yes, you found this online, but this is not necessarily the best option, you know?
Yes,
So that's one of the challenges of working in this current context where access to information is so easily available and having to show that your technical expertise, you know, is relevant and it's like we would say in Barbados, you didn't born yesterday, you know what I mean?
right.
But yeah, those are my comments.
Yes,
Thanks, Jamila.
absolutely.
You're
L-
welcome.
LG, the challenge we have is that everybody's watching HGTV and think that we can build something in a week, right? Or
That's right.
but before their eyes, they don't realize sometimes that there's a lot more that goes into a typical construction project than what these
That's
guys
so true.
do within a half hour on TV. So
Yes,
it's trying to bridge that gap sometimes and helping our clients to understand that, you know, there's a lot of other considerations that one have to take. And more often than not, especially in the Caribbean, because we're on an island, everything has to be imported. So your supply chain becomes critical to making those things happen. And then
yes,
if people make last minute changes to help them to understand again the risk in that you know, if in terms of ordering things and getting them there on time, how that impacts upon your project deadlines and so on. So that becomes
absolutely.
interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
So LG, from your perspective, I mean, you've worked in Jamaica with different levels and aspects of government through implementation and so on. How do you find the construction sector there in terms of moving towards introducing change in their management structures, introducing new technology? Because I know in the Caribbean sometimes we are a bit slow for these things and we almost sometimes have to have them foisted upon us from outside. How are things up in Jamaica?
Very, very good question. Well, as a Caribbean, in the Caribbean and Jamaica included here, we've gone through the experience of having, say, the Chinese companies doing a lot of the construction, the big mega projects.
Yes.
Now, I mean, of course, I mean, there's one side to it. There are construction companies that are Jamaican owned that believe, you know, we can do it. You know, why are you letting the Chinese do it and we can do it too, right? And that can create a divide when the government sides with a foreign construction entity, engineering entity to do something that, say, Jamaicans could do. But what we've found is that there has been quite a bit of partnership happening with Asian, not just Chinese, but other Asian construction companies that are in Jamaica. And that through that partnership, there has been a lot of knowledge transfer, especially in terms of the formalization of, say, risk management processes, project management processes, and just upgrading the kind of standards for Jamaican companies, construction companies, to access international contracts to be able to be a part of larger mega projects in other countries. So we've been seeing that kind of improvement, which I think has helped the overall human capital development of our workers, of our professionals, of our engineers. Through that, I believe that, you know, as a Caribbean, we're able to be a force that that can have the kind of global acclaim in various aspects of managing projects and various aspects of carrying out engineering projects as well. So I think that for Jamaica, since we have been experiencing a construction boom, significantly, apartment complexes, commercial complexes, not just in the city, also in other towns, which are developing, urbanizing quickly. The greater need for professionals, the greater need for professionals to have a wider set of skills, and the greater need to partner with other Jamaican companies and other international companies has been one of the themes that I've been seeing has been coming out over, say, the past 3 years and the past, say, 8 years, a little bit before the pandemic would have occurred, which continues to grow steady and continues to grow strong.
Great. Okay, guys, this is, as one would say, last round. So if there's any questions for Mr. Ramocan, here's your chance to ask some free questions, because if you have to get him on the hour, I'm sure you can't afford to. All right, we got another question coming at you, sir. Okay, this one is from Marco De Bortelli. Is there any Bowtie template for architectural/construction projects? Granted that every project is unique, it would help to start approaching risk management by knowing the most common risk in a construction project.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I invite you to download the Bowtie software that's was indicated at the end of the presentation, Bowtie Pro. It comes with some built-in templates for all kinds of projects, including construction projects. As relates to identifying risks and templates for architectural construction projects, I invite you to go to projectmanagement.com. This is a website that is owned by a Project Management Institute, PMI. When you go to that website, there is a section called templates, where you can click, type in, say, project risk for construction, and you're able to navigate to construction-specific templates that can help start turning the wheel on your risk management processes, tomorrow, right? So there are a lot of wheels that are already created, so you don't have to create them from scratch, that you can begin to use, and they've been used by proven project managers and used in many different construction contexts that you can get readily available from projectmanagement.com. Of course, there are additional premium templates that are available by becoming a member of the Project Management Institute. And there's also a website called PMI Standards Plus, PMI Standards Plus, which is basically the Google of project management. And when you become a member of the PMI, what it allows you to do is allows you to access that member-only resource, and you're able to basically navigate down to by just selecting from some drop-down boxes, say architecture, construction, agile approach, hybrid approach, predictive approach. You want to see videos, you want to see Excel templates, and that sort of thing, and you're able to narrow down to exactly what you need to touch and go to improve your project. Another thing is that you can actually type in Google Bowtie method construction, and you will see a number of templates that you can tailor to your needs and make good use of that as well.
Okay, LG, in the last few moments we have together, I want to give you an opportunity to have some closing comments, but also for persons in this forum who may be interested in perhaps doing a certificate or getting exposure to project management certification. If you could speak to that, because I know you have several means of offering advice in that regard, but also give you the opportunity to have some closing comments.
All right, okay, thank you, Vincent. So, the Sagicor Cave Hill School of Business and Management, we offer several streams of project management training, both an introductory course called Contemporary Project Management, as well as an advanced course called, you guessed it, Advanced Project Management, which will help you to get through the nuts and bolts of project management and advance you towards certification. The PMI Project Management Institute provides a variety of certifications. The flagship gold standard one is called the PMP, that's a Project Management Professional Credential, which just requires you to have 3 years experience doing projects and to be trained at the Sagicor Cato School of Business or at a PMI authorized institution to be able to prepare for the exam and to be globally certified through that means. Just in terms of closing remarks, I just want to close with this acronym that we often use in risk management. It's called ATOM, which means accept uncertainty, be thoughtful, open, and modest. So I hope this presentation has debunked the view that risk management requires you to always have to use all these mathematical, scientific techniques where you have to hire a risk specialist for, or to be able to acquire sophisticated risk and analytical software to do regression simulations and all kinds of fancy charts. That's not where risk management starts. It starts by being risk intelligent, to be able to be risk smart, to be able to identify red flags, to be able to utilize novel risk management techniques such as the bow tie technique as presented today, to be able to get your team all on the same page, to think collaboratively, to be able to open new avenues of opportunities and to create new ripples of success for your project. And you can do it. You can do it on the project that you are working on now, the project that you are lining up to work on now, and you can do it by empowering your team to be able to take on a risk-aware, risk-smart mindset. And you can do that through better risk communications by adding clarity to be able to uncover unknown risks. You can do it by being able to look through many other frameworks in a very elastic fashion to be able to go to zoom in and zoom out on various approaches towards better managing risks on your project so that you can safeguard project success now and for the projects that you work on in the future. Thank you for having me. Hope you learned a few things and hope we can connect in other ways as we together guard project success.
LJ, I want to really thank you for, number one, agreeing to come and share with us this evening. I know you're constantly busy and you're probably trying to enjoy a little downtime with your family during the summer. So I really want to from my heart, thank you for really extending the hand. And it's great that we are able to build these bridges regionally. As we said to each other, it's important that we start to build these bridges and create these networks. The region is too small. Yes, we're separated by a lot of water, but we really need to start reaching across that water and getting to know our colleagues in the other countries. So, we try to do a little bit of that here, and it's great to be able to make connections with persons such as yourself. And we realize that we have a lot more in common than we actually have that is different. So I want to thank you very much for coming through this evening, sir.
You're most welcome. And I'll leave my contact in the chat as well. And if the association would like a copy of the slides, I'll be happy to share if persons would like to benefit from that.
Great. Thank you very much, LG. And I'm sure we'll have you back again sometime in the future. But thanks so very much for coming through this evening.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for joining us this evening. I just want to alert you to the part 3 of our management suite of webinars that is going to be happening on the 27th. And on that occasion, we're going to have Mr. Carlisle Roberts. Carlisle, a colleague of mine from church, but more importantly to you, Carlisle is actually a strategist, a communicator, and a change agent. He's a former director of B2B Barbados and Wayward Islands, former general manager of Yellow Media Group, VP Enterprise and Sales and Strategic Solutions for Bahamas Telecommunications, and a VP of Cable and Wireless Business. Carlisle will be coming to share with us on that occasion, Reframing for Success. The lens through which we view a problem determines the options and opportunities that we have to solve it. Leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs, and problem solvers should have a framework for determining not only if they are solving the problem right, but also if they are solving the right problem. So we are really excited to be hooking up with Carlisle in a couple of weeks. He's on the call tonight because I asked him just to join in so he could get a feel for how these sessions run. So Carlisle, thanks for coming on this evening as well. And we look forward to your presentation in a couple of weeks' time. And also Carlisle is venturing out on his new company, which is Sardi. So he'll be able to tell us a bit about that in a couple of weeks' time. And again, ladies and gentlemen, these are all Caribbean professionals that we can reach out to. We don't necessarily need to bring people in from, as we would say, over and away when we have such talent in our region. So I really want to thank you all for coming out. Remember to contact our secretariat to claim those CPD points. And we look forward to seeing you guys on the 27th. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening and good night to you.